Okay.
Yeah, my mum literally called my dad up and he was in Africa on like some work trip somewhere because they both work in international development. He's like, he's like, should I come to Paris with the kids? And she's like, no, get back to Kennington and find us a house, because they were living above a kebab shop. He's like, find us a house now.
Yeah.
So that's the house my mum still lives in. Yeah, that's the house we went back to yesterday. Yeah.
Did you capture any of that? Was that rolling?
Always wrong.
Yeah, that was such a great story. Welcome to Out of Office with Kim. I'm your host, Kim, all the way from sunny southeast London. Today, I want to give a bit of a trigger warning for this episode. We will be talking about conversations surrounding themes such as mental health and suicide. So if that's too much for you, please feel free to not engage with this episode and follow us for the next one. So I would like to introduce my guest. Please let the people know who you are, darling.
Hi guys, I'm Hélène Selam Kleih. I am a writer, researcher, now trainee psychotherapist, and / retired / sometimes model.
Don't worry, we'll touch on all of those things. So
all of the slashes.
For my show, I always talked about how I know the person.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know nobody at all, and I just stalk them on Instagram. But most of the time, I do know them because I like to have people on here who inspire me in many different ways. So we actually met at our football.
Yeah, the one football session that I actually turned up to.
So there's a team called Intermelanin, Big Up Intermelanin. It's a team for women of colour and non-binary players. Always big up all the time. I was forced into joining by the one and only Viti, wherever you are.
Low key, same.
She was like, you'd be so sick at it.
She recruited us.
I was like, based on what?
Not active at all.
Yeah. And I remember you came to one session and you had like a broken ankle of some sort.
Yeah, I basically ran a marathon in 2022 and I don't think I trained as I should have.
Oh.
But like halfway through, I really, really messed up my ankle. But then I kept running on it. I was like, I'm going to finish. I'm going to do it. But now I've actually got issues with the ankle. And I was like, yeah, I can play football. And you saw that session, it was light. And I still was like, oh, it's hurting.
And then I never saw you again after that.
No, after that, I was like, no, I'm going to come to the pub quizzes and that's it.
Awesome, right. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. So according to your bio, you've got writer, researcher, troubleshooter.
Yeah, troubleshooter. I'm the fixer. Yeah.
What do you fix?
The fixer. I've just kind of fallen into a lot of different roles, like production, in terms of writing, also copy editing, press releases, all that kind of stuff. So I've always kind of been behind the scenes and then also in front of the camera. And I really enjoy both. I can't really pinpoint which one is more enjoyable. But essentially troubleshooter is my thing, because people come to me.
You're a fixer.
Like, hey, can you or connector even, facilitate things. That's the thing.
Facilitator.
Yeah.
What are your favourite things to kind of facilitate?
Mainly, I really enjoy if I know someone that could help someone else. I love linking and connecting the dots, because I'm like that. I think that's the only way that that's really networking.
Absolutely.
And I think people also assume that you have to go to events or you have to be really extroverted in order to get to that point. Whereas I think it's really about everyone kind of putting in the work and actually thinking, oh wait, I have this friend that you would resonate with, or you have an interest, and I've had that with even my psychotherapy journey, where I wouldn't be here now if there weren't some certain people that were given to me almost. I didn't meet them organically. It was very much like, here's an email intro, like here's a little WhatsApp combo. So I do think that's really important. And yeah, especially with the younger generation, I'm like, I think you should put people on and use your connects.
100%.
Yeah.
A lot of guests have spoken about networking and the importance.
Yeah.
I like what you said about not just saying you don't just have to go to events. There are other ways of connecting dots, which I think people don't necessarily think about when they think of networking.
No, 100%. I think that's the beauty of social media and in this internet age, where I'm like, I don't think, for example, I would have met or even had as many contributors, or the him and his community is actually more online than it is in real life, because there are people all over the world.
100%.
So it's kind of like, how do you it encourages, like, there's more access basically to different ways of seeing things and different conversations,
a way we didn't have before.
Exactly.
People aren't as connected, right? It's insane to me when you really think about social media. I know there's a lot of negativity.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But positivity and being able to connect with someone who's like in Australia.
Like, you're just telling me now, like, you haven't actually met some of the people that you've hit up. You've just been like, you know what, I really like your work. I really fuck with who you are as a person. Done.
Which is strange, because, and also I feel like things like TikTok, right? I know people slate TikTok. Yeah, I'm a big TikTok fan. But even like TikTok, the community that you build, like when you have a platform, like you're a content creator, the community that you build through TikTok, you can't necessarily do that in person the same way.
No, there's a lot actually, even I'm having to learn, where I'm like, okay, I'm for a certain I don't know, for a certain mission to be fulfilled almost, you do have to move on to TikTok, especially if you're like an advocate for something.
Absolutely.
I also don't really like using the word activist. Because
tell me more about that.
Just going to let you know that. More just because I think it's quite loaded, and I think there's also it puts a lot of pressure on the individual as well to uphold this kind of moral standing.
100%.
Or the expectations are huger, and in the long run I don't think it's beneficial to call someone an activist unless they're actually on the front line, because I think then, I'm not saying that there's, what's a real activist, but if we look at back in the day, the people that were really pushing, and their work is still recognized now, and we're resharing quotes of them right now. I think those were the real activists doing policy change on the ground 100%. And devoting their whole entire lives to it. So I think it's not that I'm trying to dilute my work or who I am as a person, but I think I would say advocate, because it's not...
I also prefer... I do think as well, when we ascribe people... For example, a lot of influencers, people give the term activist to them.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think... it warps people's perception on who we should be calling to action sometimes.
Exactly.
Because it's so much pressure on the individual, and we're forgetting about the actual people making the decision.
We also forget about the experts, I know that, for example, even before I was studying psychotherapy, I was called to certain panels that I didn't actually feel qualified enough.
Okay.
Or I knew someone who would be better at discussing a certain issue. And also, mental health isn't just this huge bracket term. There's so many different intersections, and so it's very nuanced. So I can't speak on certain things that it's not necessarily that I haven't lived through, but I haven't studied. Wouldn't say I'm an expert in anything yet, but this isn't my specific or what I specialize in. So I think it can be dangerous, and I think also when you look at the way brands engage with that, it can become a bit dangerous.
I was gonna touch on that, because it's also like, who do brands want to work with and why? I think sometimes, and it's like a double-edged sword, I suppose, because it's always good to platform people and such. But as you said, there are some people who are expert, but might not necessarily be like front face. Exactly.
They're not even on Instagram.
Exactly. The people that have studied for years and who've been in the field and such thing. And it's like, obviously, unfortunately, it is about followers sometimes. Yeah. And it's not to say that people shouldn't get opportunities. Of course they should, but there are people... the experts, what about them?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing with them? So it's an interesting...
And also the people just coming into it, who are really passionate and who are just young and who haven't got the connects necessarily. It's like, for him and his, we would that's basically what I mean by facilitator, where I would run events, and we had really huge turnouts at the time. For it not being really a discourse, men and mental health wasn't really something that was talked about then. But really just platforming people that didn't necessarily had a voice, they just didn't have the platform.
Absolutely.
So it's just, you kind of just share your own, and there are amazing people also that are doing amazing work in their respective communities, and they just haven't had, interviews, or they haven't had the opportunities. And then a lot of them actually have, since being involved, have then just gone on to, it's spiraled out. And so I really do enjoy watching like that ripple effect, and then seeing them later, like 3-4 years on, and I'm like, whoa. And it just needed a bit of push. That's
absolutely
it. Yeah.
So we'll touch a little bit more on him and his in a bit, but I first wanted to talk about your modelling.
Okay.
So it's funny because I didn't know. It's mad, right? Obviously, before I have guests on, I obviously researched them like a stalker, obviously. I didn't know you was a model, but I don't know why I didn't know that, because it's actually quite obvious to me.
Oh, thank you.
You look
guys.
like one. So I wanted to talk about that because you've been working with some big brands,
Yeah.
Vivienne Westwood, Estee Lauder, etc., etc. Talk to me a little bit about your journey, how it happened.
Honestly, I'm just a bit raggo. I'm like proper Southeast London girl. And I don't know, me and my brother, my twin brother, we would get scouted quite a bit when we were younger.
Wow.
But we were like, I also had never walked in heels. Did barely wore dresses. Was very like, don't want to do that. It's not my vibe. But then my brother was basically, it was the start of his psychosis, and I don't think my parents really understood it 100%. So I was back from uni. I was studying at Warwick, so I was doing English Lit and French. And I got fired from my catering job because I was turning up like 10, 20 minutes late because I was like, it's almost like I was swapping a shift I was with my brother the whole day.
Yep.
And then was swapping a shift with my mum. So I got fired and was also like, I really need peas. I need money quick, essentially. So just walked into an agency, walked into Nev's Models, big up Nevs. And they were like, have you ever modeled before? I was like, yeah, I have, yeah. Never. Hadn't even walked in heels.
It,
yeah. And then it went really well. And I think people think that it's like you just have to look a certain way to be a model. And I think it's really just how you engage with people.
Really?
You will get booked with the same clients over and over again. Like I was a Burberry fit model for years.
Wow.
And that's what helped fund the book. Like there was heavy funding from them. And it's really just about the relationship, you know? And I don't think you necessarily can still be yourself and still have like, I don't know, stick up for yourself as well, because I think it's also an industry where people think you have to also suck up to people, you don't need to lick their boots, know, you don't need to do that, but you can work in a professional way and just, if you're a fun person and you're engaging, you would be fab modelling, babes.
I'm too short.
But also now, actually, I don't think there's any limitations on
people are saying
who can model.
You do see,
because when I was starting, it was completely different. Like it was completely different, especially for Black people. It was like, just a different world. 2015, 2016, and now I just see. I think people and brands. It's sometimes also a double-edged sword where I'm like, sometimes I feel is objectifying still, and it can just commodify, your nuance or your intersectionality. Is like, it is very commodified. Like, okay, wait, you're queer, let's you in that campaign, but if you want to get your money up, it is you can also play with that. You can work with it. So I do think it's a lot more inclusive than it used to be. But behind the scenes, sometimes that's kind of why I got quite tired, especially whilst running a mental health platform or organization. I felt like that experience was commodified quite heavily, and with certain brands, like, not going to name them, but quite very, very big ones, with huge budgets, and the whole campaign was based on being yourself and mental health and you being an advocate, and actually there was the lack of safeguarding actually on set happens often. So I think it's really, and not even directly sometimes to me, I'm just watching things happen. So misgendering, and it's like you've brought on this person specifically to tell their experience. So I just think sometimes there's a huge lack of care where things can still get it's very heavy on the optics.
I was gonna say it must be a clash.
I think it has. Now I'm basically trying to marry the two, where it's not also because I need money. Tuition fees are expensive,
of course,
but I think I have also been a bit anti the past, especially after all the protests in the UK with Black Lives Matter, and just seeing how different brands really addressed that, and different agencies I was working with. I was a bit disheartened, and I was kind of a bit like, you know what, I'm just going to step out for a bit. And 100. I've done my bits on my own terms, so I've still really enjoyed it. But I think there needs to be an exchange of trust between, it's not just about, okay, you're the model, you've got to do everything, or talent even. A lot of people now are talent, and there's this expectation that they just they have to take every single job, and they just have to do, bend over backwards for their agency, when it's like, actually, your agency
You need
needs
me.
exactly, they need you. And I think, you know, that needs to be implemented from the jump, like not to be arrogant, but you need to be self-assured that you deserve your place there. And it's not, you know, otherwise the relationship can be very disingenuous and not.
I get it.
Yeah, and when it's not, I get it also, it is entertainment. It's never going to be 100% authentic, but it needs to have some semblance to being authentic to you for you to carry on and feel good about the work you're doing as well.
But that must be hard. When you're really starting out, surely it's hard to
100%,
have that self-assurance.
100%. And I would say also, you do still have to, especially at the beginning, you can't be as picky. And like, I do remember that, especially when I was modelling, you know, I don't know. It's also when you don't look like what they perceive as a black person or a mixed race person or this or that, they will typecast you into, so I was always put into campaigns, for example, as an Arab.
Interesting.
And as much as I love my Arab brothers and sisters, I'm not Arab.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have that cultural identity even. I haven't grown up with Arabs. You know, if you put me in a West African campaign, probably could deal with that like easier. So I a lot of the time, I still really enjoyed it, but there were moments where it felt kind of, you know, it's not my place to be, I'm taking up someone else's space,
yeah, 100%.
You know? And I think the same way as if they're doing a campaign on blackness and everyone's light, I'm kind of like, okay, first of all, I'm also half black, and I know that we're not in America, so
one drop rule.
yeah, so, but I'm very aware of that. I'm also East African, and it's like the representation, for example, of Eritreans, they don't even know that Eritrea exists. So I'm half Eritrean, my mum's Eritrean, and then my dad's German. But yeah, I don't know, the way that people perceive your identity and from what they look at, and I think that's why I mean, fashion, entertainment, everything, it does commodify your experience and who you are, but you know, there is a way that you can get around it and still you know, preserve your really preserve your identity, because it's like, you don't want it to be too diluted.
Yeah, no,
you know?
it's true. But I think with identity, it's 100% about how you're perceived at the end of the day, which I find really tricky.
Yeah.
With the way that people approach identity and diverse campaigns, it's always about what you can see, and not all identities you can see.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, there's so many invisible, especially when we're talking about things like mental health. You can't always see that. 9 times out of 10, I don't know if you can.
No, and also not being the same, you know, for example, able-bodied. I have a lot of friends who aren't able-bodied, and it's like you can't physically see it. So it's how they're perceived even on the street, like their access to, even with the NHS.
100%.
You know, there's just so much, a lot of different criteria, and then you add also then you know, race, like point blank race, how I've seen different groups treated, specifically black women in the NHS system. So to get an ADHD diagnosis, for example, or to even talk about eating disorders. So I had eating disorders for about 7 years. And I remember telling my mum, I'm like, if I am struggling, what is one of my darker skinned sisters doing? You know, how are they getting treated in this system? And then add the other intersections. Okay, what if they're a trans woman?
100%.
What's happening then?
100%.
So, I think really for change to be actually enacted, it's about policy change, and it's actually
100%.
about implementing them on, you know, as much as I love books and I love, you know, creative expression. That's why now I'm working in the actual, trying to get into the field of psychotherapy, more to actually just implement long-standing change.
I know, yeah.
Because there's only so many people you can access with a book, you know.
100%.
Even if it's very successful, there's only so many people that can attend an event, you know. So that's also why I think the internet's really great, because now you can record everything, you can put it up. There's TikTok, like literally what you were saying. I'm like, I use TikTok for bands, but
listen, don't get me wrong, I'd be laughing on there.
But I'll be lurking on all the jokes pages.
A lot of my learning
comes,
honestly, and
100%,
especially like experiencing people that you don't have in your day-to-day life. That's one of the things I really enjoy about TikTok. And I'm a bit strange. I'm really obsessed with different conditions. And I spend a lot of time on TikTok just watching people explain how their condition impacts them, because it's one thing to read, someone's got ME, but like to actually watch how they navigate life is a different thing. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about TikTok. It just gives those people a platform, and you would never understand. No, you don't. Obviously, I don't understand, but you don't understand the same way without experiencing them. So I just what I'm saying, like, I know TikTok's haha he he, but there are benefits to it. And let's talk a little bit about mental health in the UK. Obviously, you're an advocate. I've got some stats here I'm going to read for the audience listening to. So we've got 1 in 8 men in England have a common mental health problem, such as depression or anxiety. Suicide is the leading cause of death for men under 50 in the UK. Men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than women. Black men are more likely to experience symptoms of psychosis. And only 6% of black people receive treatment for these problems. And obviously for women, whole nother ballpark, of course. But obviously a lot of your work focuses on men. So I'd like to talk a little bit about this. Let's talk about where you are with it. We obviously got your lovely book. Talk to me, darling.
So, essentially my twin brother has always had autism, so he's neurodivergent. And as we were growing up, the councils like Lambeth, Southwark, we've always been in Southwark, but it was actually Lambeth Council that really, pulled out the stops to help him at a time when I remember my mum going to court and representing herself so that he could just have a Senko, so it's like an assistant in class. And so already you have that from childhood, so he's always been different. Do you get what I mean? So then he was going to quote unquote normal school, so did the university route and essentially developed psychosis through stress. Essentially there's also a massive assumption that psychosis, and I think also this very based on a racial assumption that every black man in the system it's come through weed. And like, fair enough, sometimes it has, but also what's the root there? Why were they smoking in the first place? What's their environment? It's very hard to access mental health care if your actual economic, social, everything, your actual material lived reality is not up to scratch 100%. At all. So,
and culturally as well,
and then
what's
that's
the cultural understanding, right?
Exactly,
as a black community, obviously I definitely think we've moved forward, but
we've got
a way to go, but I think things are getting a little bit better. People are feeling more open to talk about things, right? People are feeling like I can speak. But growing up as a kid, being 15, 14, feeling like I don't feel like everybody else, it's hard to broach that conversation within the community, because it's like, you're fine, you're fine.
And also our parents, I think, have had also a different reality. 100%. If I'm like thinking about my mum, for example, theirs is the immigrant story, so they're not really, they're almost like, and I think it's taken my brother actually having psychosis for her to understand certain things even about myself, where it's kind of a luxury to think about your mental health. They're like, we just got on with it. We got here and we just got on with it.
Exactly.
But then you see how the generational trauma has trickled down, because they've just got on with it. I think, our generation and younger are really the ones that are really going to change things for their 100%. Families and really, to an extent, reverse the damage, because as much as even in the most loving families, there's really, really wild ways of thinking.
100%.
And that's just been passed down through
from generation to generation. It's trauma.
Trauma, exactly.
And it's also getting older and realizing some of the responses maybe your parents had, thinking, right, where did that actually come from?
Exactly. And sometimes if you're lucky to have a good relationship with your parents, like I do talk to my mum sometimes and we'll check her in the most respectful way, because that woman is a genius and has done everything for us. But I'm like, mum, like, check yourself. Why do you think you were doing that? It's really, I know it's very like the therapist being like, but why? Why, mum? But why?
But it's true.
Yeah, because it's also then it's also about also. I think we're all on a continuous journey of learning. Like 100%. I don't think you can never say that you've learned everything, So my mum's actually really grateful for that. Like the way that I've analysed certain situations, she's like, oh, I would never have thought that. I think also culturally, like as much as we say the black community, I think each different you know, Caribbeans, West Africans, East
100%.
Africans, they're all, like Eritreans, for example, even the way that they deal with things are very different to Ethiopians, and we're neighbours. We're like, you know, I think it's also depends on your tribe. It's very much
100%.
on like how you're affected culturally by the mannerisms, the ways of thinking. So yeah, specifically in the Eritrean community, it was very hush hush. Like, and at church, Eritrean church, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, so how's your brother?" It was not something we talked about, especially when he's been, he was sectioned. He's been in the mental health system since about 2013, and then officially sectioned in 2015, and then has been in and out. Now he's in a really great place, and in supported accommodation. Yeah, he's doing fab. He's therapizing me right now.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, he's doing really great. But I think, even releasing the book on a really personal level has encouraged my mum to speak more. And
amazing.
Even in terms of, you know, people at work had no idea that she was going through this, and she's taking phone calls with doctors and emergency services in the toilets in between meetings. So it's really about also how we encourage, you know, it's not even a talk or a theme, or, you know, we encourage mental health even to be discussed more. It's more also to release the facade that you're performing.
100%.
Because as a carer, it's also incredibly damaging for your own mental health. And I think that's why now my parents understand more about mental health, because they've seen how it's affected them personally.
Of course, because they've been carers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, 100%. I think more can be done in terms of also really implementing mental health. You know, the learning of mental health, even in primary schools, it can be done in a very soft way.
100%.
I do workshops, like before, just for their protection, can't say what primary schools, but in South.
Some primary schools,
some primary schools in South. And these are primary schools that actually it's not part of the curriculum. So I know for a fact that it's teachers putting money in, and then now I kind of just do it like, for free. Because I'm like, if I have a good month and I'm getting, that's why, for example, I don't mind going back into the entertainment or fashion space. Because that's where you can earn the money, and then you can put it back into your community in the way that it serves you and serves them.
How do you broach the topic of mental health with young
through
people?
Games. Through games, and through also just teaching them how to articulate their feelings. Some of them come from families where it's just not spoken of at all. It's really just through being, you know, it's not so simple as, okay, so you said sad, how can we get in deeper, like what feeling, and also what feeling does it come up in your body? You know, because a lot of kids will actually have, I really believe in somatics and how 100%. We store trauma in the body.
100%.
So I think a lot of childhood trauma can stay with you as an adult because it's not been released, you know, in a very physical way. And that comes through movement, through dance, through speaking, because also speaking can be performative. So that goes for men as well, specifically for men. That's why it's a creative anthology. More because I think there's difficulty in accessing mental health care, even if it's there. Because speaking's not for everyone.
100%.
You know, even me, I struggle to speak about my own stuff, and it's not necessarily because I don't want to share. It's just not second nature for me. Whereas I might have, my brother, for example, does very well with talking therapy. So when he has it, I can see him improving. Whereas me, it's a slow burner. So it's the same with kids. You know, you have to find out what works for each 100%. Of those children.
And it's important intervention, right? And to do things at the beginning when you're young, because
it's all about prevention. This is all about prevention.
Prevention,
but it's also intervention.
Yeah,
it's the same.
Because I think as well, having those conversations when you're younger. Well, literally what you said, not being able to describe what you're experiencing. And that's why I think we've come a long way with mental health now, because there's so much more language that's an accessible language as well.
Exactly,
right?
Accessible
words
language.
People can actually understand and people can explain. And this is why I think we're seeing a rise in what people are saying, like self-diagnosing, right? Because they're watching
when we were talking about TikTok, I was like, ooh.
It's people have taken it too far, but for some people it's worked. And as you mentioned about actual getting diagnosed for a lot of things, it's so hard, and the waiting list and such things. But anyways, people having the language to be able to describe how they feel will help benefit people, because it's like, you could struggle with something for a long time, but you can't pinpoint. You know something's not right, but you can't pinpoint what, and you don't have the language to explain it.
It's more that confusion, actually, that will create more mental health issues.
Absolutely.
Where you feel like you're different, you feel like, okay, that I'm... Also, there's a lot of judgment where you feel like you're to blame. And a lot of these children, especially the primary schools that I'm working in, have really, really tough situations. Even if they've got families who are 100% supportive, they actually don't have the time and the energy to put in after working double shifts.
100%.
And you know, when again it's about when the material reality isn't matched up to, you know, they're hungry, you know, that's gonna create its own mental health issues and lack of, you know, development for children.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's really about providing all fronts of care, and also teaching them that it's okay for it to be messy. You know, I think also now mental health, I don't know, people performing good mental health even, and that can be really dangerous, where it's like you're almost curating. I do too. It's especially studying what I'm studying now. I have to be good to be able to have my clients, and how to be able to, right now I'm in training, and to be able to, you know, really be there for them. But I will have this judgment, you know, and that's not coming from anywhere outside. It's this judgment where I'm like, oh, I've gone through all of this month. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable of doing that. But actually you are very much capable because of the things that you're going through.
100%.
It's really about how you deal with it.
Exactly.
And it's not about minimizing it either. But I think at some point you also have to accept what your reality is, you know, otherwise you can stay in this hole of
100%.
It can, and it's sad, but I've been in that hole too, where it's been like it can very easily turn into victimization, where you're like, why is everything going wrong? And it's so normal. And I think also people shouldn't have shame for that part as well, because that's a completely normal part. I go through it daily. like, car didn't tap on the train.
Why me?
Why me?
No, I have why me moments all the time.
And that's 100%. Just, I think people kind of glorify this, like, I've got it all together.
But I think that's so dangerous.
It's so dangerous because on Instagram, the people that are portraying that they've got it all together are actually the ones that are most damaged. Like
100%.
That's why I say it's very dangerous to say you're a mental health activist, and I think there needs to be so much care and self-care that they're enacting, and take breaks. I've taken breaks, and you know,
100%.
I've taken breaks with him and his, because I'm like, actually, I've actually declined, but I could feel myself deteriorating, like my mental health, when I was putting too much into everyone else. It's like, you need to focus on yourself first.
To fill your own cup.
Yeah.
And it's really important for people to understand that also it's okay to have bad days. Or not even bad days, bad periods, bad moments. And I also think when you're on a journey, say, of like awareness, and say you start going to therapy and it's working, and then you have a moment of like, oh my gosh, things are going bad again.
That means it's actually working. That actually means that you're working. It's like there's a stage of like, you can have self-awareness, but actually really feeling the shifts and the changes in your life and in your body. That means it's actually working.
100%. And
I think that's when I have some friends who like start therapy and they're like 4 sessions in, they're like, it's great. I'm like, okay, babe.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Because you're going to have that session where you cry and then you don't stop crying for the next 4 sessions.
You need to have that kind of pivotal point where 100%. You understand that actually it doesn't need to be perfect, and life is never going to be perfect. It's always going to be like this.
And I think some of the way that people talk about practicing good mental health is that everything must be sweet every day, everything must be perfect. You're going to do your yoga, going to do your breath exercise, it's going to be amazing.
Also,
but like,
breath work might not work for everyone. That's what I'm trying to say.
I need to just talk about that, right? Not even just breath work.
I have ADHD, okay? So I think it's more ADD, again, on the waiting list of diagnosis. So it was my uni, obviously, because all my teachers are psychotherapists. They were like, you have a funny way of like just the processes in my mind. And actually, I would count it as my superpower, because it's actually enabled me to do so much. But I've also struggled as a child. I remember specifically, like, okay, I have to spend a lot more. I've always been academic, but I will have to spend hours more than anyone else. And I would say that as well. So it made me feel like I was dumb. you know?
I get that.
That I'm like, my intelligence is learned. And I'm like, no, everyone has intelligence in them, and it's how it comes out.
Everyone learns in different ways as well.
Exactly.
Right? That's why they teach you those things to be like kinesthetic.
Like, my brother's a genius, but academically, on paper, hasn't succeeded, you know, and that's actually what created his psychosis.
But let's not even get into how we test intelligence in schools.
It's very, exactly.
Not everyone can perform via test paper. Because a lot of in school, right, it's memorization. So if you've got a rubbish memory, forget it.
My mum is literally a genius and has done a PhD, has done crazy studies in France. She literally talks about how she passed in Eritrea all her exams. She was top of the class.
Yeah.
She's like, I memorized. She's like, I'm just really good at memorizing. She's not discounting her intelligence, but she's like, me, maths, no way. I just memorize everything.
Yeah.
And that's how it was really taught back in the day, and it is still like that now.
Which is it doesn't allow for creative expression and other ways of learning and understanding things and how you digest things.
And some people have different minds. Their brain is musical.
100%.
You know? And you can really see it with how, I don't know, they do things I could only imagine, you know? And it's not me also belittling myself, but I'm like, I am tone deaf. I can play the piano, but again, out of memorization. Yeah. But I am 100% tone deaf, like no rhythm whatsoever.
Sorry, that makes me laugh.
I'm quite fine with that, you know? But I'm like, I'm a raver, I'm not a whiner.
Yeah. And you know what? Awareness.
Yeah, I'm like, awareness is key, babes. My friend's like, well, what's this new dance you've created? I'm like, it's called the aeroplane.
Yeah, don't worry about that, darling.
Yeah, don't worry.
So let's talk about your degree.
Yeah.
I'm really interested because you're doing psychotherapy at the minute. How far are you in?
So I'm studying at Regent's University, and that's literally bang in the middle of Regent's Park.
Lovely.
Really fab course. Yeah, really, really great course. I've done the foundation, and now I am pretty much a year and a half into the masters. So I have the end of this year till the end of this year, and then one more year. Then maybe another year if I want to be UKCP registered. This degree so the 3 years will cover BACP, and then one more year will cover UKCP. If you are in therapy, you'll know what those mean. It's just different accreditations. Yeah, it's literally just different accreditations, but it just means that you can, to be honest, it kind of also, it's just yeah, you know what it is. It's just literally names of things. Yeah. Like, I don't think it's a reflection of whether you're a great therapist or not. Like, I've had great therapists who are, you know, who have had completely different learning experiences in other countries. But it just enables me to work in more of the field of policy change, essentially.
And I want to talk a bit about like the importance of having black counsellors and black therapists, because in the UK we'll make up about 3%. Yeah. It's just a very small percent.
Very small.
Throw that out there. Yeah. Just going to throw that out there. But I will just add, there are some great services. I forgot the name of it now, where you can specifically...
Black Minds Matter.
Black Minds Matter. And there's like a directory that's not just black, it's people of colour as well. What's it called? It is Black African Asian Therapy Network.
Yes, yeah. I literally have my little foot.
Where you can find therapists specifically of colour, and I think that's super important, because when I speak to a lot of friends, they always say to me, I want to go to therapy, but I need a black therapist. Yeah. Like, they feel like it's important, and I hear it 100%. Yeah. So I want to talk to you about how the importance you think it is, and what made you go into it.
I think it's also about understanding. So you have these symptoms of anxiety, for example, and you're talking about an experience that you face, and it can be belittled or not acknowledged, and it's not necessarily malicious, but psychotherapy as a field is very white. You know, it's very Eurocentric as well. So there's a lack of belief or a lack of importance placed on, for example, spirituality. Yes. You know, and different forms of spirituality, not just, you know, organised religion per se. I'm Catholic, but I've always shied away from talking about how God impacts me, because I'm like, oh, they're going to think it's silly. Yeah. And psychotherapy sometimes can be very based in the science and on the very, not on like the lived reality or the felt sense, you know? And so I think that really helps when you do have someone that you can relate to. 100%. It doesn't have to be like from the same background, and I think actually it's better if it's not from the same background. I agree. Because
I agree.
if I had an Eritrean psychotherapist, I would literally be like, I'm not talking about any of this, like,
isn't
stuff.
it strange how, for me, I've felt like a little bit of judgment. I know you're not. I hope not. I know you're not judging me, but I'm looking at you in a different way.
Okay, so there's this thing called transference and counter-transference, but it's like, say even how we relate to each other. I could be like, oh, you remind me of someone I know, or your mannerisms remind me of someone I know. So then I create this kind of interaction, or how I expect you. It's basically, you create it's an easy route to assumptions, assuming.
And it's like me looking at my therapist and thinking, it's like an auntie.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, my therapist is Moroccan, is also technically an auntie. I have that warmth and assurance from her, in my view, because she feels like an auntie. But the kind of things, or the kind of depth I can go with her, and she can challenge me, but she also still understands the cultural nuances, because as much as she's Moroccan, she understands family dynamics. Whereas
100%.
if I was explaining that to another therapist who might be, British background, I also have had an amazing British therapist. So I think, so I think it really is about really finding who you really gel with, and you're gonna have to. It's like the dating process. You're gonna have to.
You do
go on those dates, and
you
then
have
be
to
like,
try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
This is my best therapist, and I've had 8 so far, and I have also been at that point where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna leave it. I can't be bothered. But when you do when you crack the code, and also, that therapist might not be with you for different parts of your life, you know? You need to actually think about, okay, how are they helping me in this part and what I'm dealing with right now?
On, what you want to focus on as well. And I think sometimes people get discouraged, and I'll always say this, if you have like one session, you'd be like, we're not working, and then they just kind of give up. You're not going to gel with, literally, as you said, you're not going to gel with everyone. It's about who you think can help you at the time.
Yeah. And challenge you as well.
Yeah, but there's so much to it.
Yeah, you don't.
Absolutely,
because you're wasting your money and you're wasting their time.
100%. You're not going to go. You're not. My therapist at the moment. When I first was placed with her, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Because she's white Irish lady. Yeah. I was a bit like, suspect.
But the thing is also, you come in with your own judgment, and which is normal because of what you experience on a daily, your day to day. Yeah.
But big up Christine every time. Anyways, because she makes me see things in ways I just wouldn't see on my own, basically. Yeah. And there are times where there's something she doesn't understand, but I'm all right with that, because I've also had black therapists, and at the time, that's what I needed. Yeah. And it was a perfectly safe space. Yeah. But that's because of what I wanted to talk about, So it's also, you need to, I think it's also need to be understood that therapists are people as well. 100. So it isn't actually about a therapeutic relationship. It's about an actual human relation that you have with this person. And it's also about teaching them. Like, I teach my therapist. She asks me questions, and I'm like, that's what I really love. And that should also be in friendships, in relationships, and everything. Relationships, you should want to learn from other people. So I think there's some psychotherapists that come at it with a more like, there's a hierarchy, and like, I am the expert. Whereas for me, I really believe the client is the expert of their own lived experience. Definitely. Like, I'm never going to tell you what you've experienced and how that's made you feel. You have to tell me, and then we can dissect it. And even then, it's like, I don't think, what I'm learning anyway is even leading questions, you can't ever assume that what you perceive of someone is the correct. There's an arrogance in that. So it's really about learning from the client and them teaching you about themselves. And what barriers have you faced thus far in your journey? Well, that's a big question. In learning, I've had one black lecturer, amazing, shout out Carl, from New York, a really, really, really amazing lecturer. But thing is, I've had amazing teachers. All my teachers are amazing in their own right. But there's only 2 women of colour, me and another woman who's Egyptian. And obviously she's not black. So also, why am I getting looked at as the expert of blackness, I think it sometimes I feel like I'm teaching, and that it's quite frustrating. Yes. And I think it's even beyond psychotherapy. It's in academic, it's in institutions, period. But especially in the academic route, and the higher you go, which is annoying, because it's like, why there's a barrier to access also in terms of the fees.
I'm lucky that I saved money, but say, you know, I'm in class and I'm aware of class. I'm in lessons and I'm very aware of class, like, and race, you know, and, you know, I understand, like, I would be aware of that in a work environment, but here because it's so deep, the work we're doing is so deep, and it's almost like Big Brother. We're having to learn about each other and really break each other down, and the level of sharing, and it's like certain things I know that I'm reluctant to share because I'm like, also I'm kind of like, you don't deserve the teaching point from me. Go home and do your own learning.
100%.
Because as a psychotherapist, you're going to have clients who aren't from your lived experience. Like, you have to do the research and really do the research in like a very genuine and authentic way, and really like integrate yourself into those communities, watch how they react to things, watch how they deal with things, and come from a place that isn't voyeuristic. And I think sometimes even the people with the best intentions, it's very white savior.
Well,
you know?
It's so difficult because a lot
you have
of people,
to think about the people who decide to study psychotherapy.
100%.
There are people, always be wary of people that say they're empaths from the jump, because usually a real empath struggles with the boundaries, struggles with actually enacting self-care, and struggles with the empathy not consuming them, you know. And sometimes I've met amazing people on my courses, but, you know, the people that I had on my foundation, for example, it's almost like this is a little life change.
Yes.
So it's really to understand the depth and the mission of it. Like, it is a mission. Like, it's the same. You're caring for people. You're helping people. It's
super
important.
important.
It's the same as deciding to become a nurse or deciding to become a doctor. Like, you have to really understand that you're almost there to serve, and like, be okay with that. You know, it's not about you. It's about your clients, you know.
I just,
I'm like, go into this one was a techie one, touchy.
No, because I do think we're definitely in a time now where mental health is finally, and I'm really happy.
Same.
Finally.
I'm not also a complainer about this, because I'm like, at least now I can have these discussions.
Period.
Whereas,
and that is
that's actually even enough
because
right now.
where we were before was genuinely such a dangerous place to be for so many people.
Yeah.
And we speak about access, and it's better now, sure, but it's nowhere. It's still terrible.
And I think that's also just because of it comes from the top down. It's about underfunding. It's about you know, like, my brother didn't need to be in the mental health system for 10 years. You know, he 100% didn't need to be, but he has also had people there who have saved him. So it's I can't just say, oh yeah, the NHS has failed him. I'm like, who has failed the NHS?
Period. Let's not go getting all deep with that, but no, it's true. But we I do think definitely, as I said, we're getting better. People are having conversations, and people are finally understanding that mental health is just as important as physical health, and it all
interlinks.
100%.
You're going to the doctors and they can't figure out why you're ill, why your hair's falling out, especially issues with the stomach, for example.
I was just going to say
related to stress,
because I have a lot of gastrointestinal issues, right? And it's all related. It's like, think about not necessarily having like generalized anxiety disorder, but just everyday anxiousness, right? You feel anxious, you need to go to the toilet.
Your symptoms.
What's going on? Like, it's all linked. The shakes. It all interlinks, and that's why I'm trying to say, like, the importance of understanding your mind to then understand your body. Because there's so many people who are ill and they can't
pinpoint it.
What's going on. It's stress. Or something.
And again, I think it's also this stress from like what's imposed on in terms of what you deal with on a day-to-day, in terms of, for example, racism. Black people are way more at risk of developing, for example, cancers because of stress. It's literally because of stress, and because of being overworked and not having their material reality again match up to what they need, you know? So I think, first has to come like, stability in terms of, you know, economy, all of that on a very, I'm not going to go into politics.
Yeah, there's a lot.
but on that sense, but then also if you do have time and you can focus on yourself a bit, I'm like 100%, especially with, like, for example, mothers, you know, what they have to deal with right now with the cost of living crisis. I'm like, I could only imagine. So a lot of the time I'm with the kids, and when their parents come to pick them up, especially the mums, I'm like, there's always like a little like chat. I'm like, I do let them know that as much as I'm not fully trained yet, I'm like, you can come and chat, because it's not gonna like do anything to me. Do you know what I mean? It's not gonna. A lot of the time they have fear as well of talking, even to their friends, because they don't want to burden
100%.
others.
But it's heavy.
Yeah,
it's heavy.
But also life is heavy, and like
100.
this field is heavy. It is what it is. I think it's also finding the moments of joy. Like, I still enjoy myself. I still have other things that I do in life that aren't related to psychotherapy. And I do tap out sometimes, especially with certain family members.
Yeah, fair.
and friends, and I've grown to this only because I've had literal complete burnouts and breakdowns where I'm like, I actually don't have the capacity right this moment. Can we do tomorrow? You know,
it's being kind to yourself.
Yeah,
right?
and you have to, in terms of like longevity of you actually like continuing in a healthy and proper manner. You have to really make sure that you've got those moments to yourself.
100%. I think sometimes people forget that you need to take times out. I forget, as someone like who spends a lot of time with people. I love people.
Your social battery needs to be.
But I forget. My problem with my social battery is it goes before I realise, and I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. Why do I feel like this?
You're just there mute.
I've been
sitting on the sofa
for so
like,
long, and because I'm such like a animated person, it's very obvious, and I'm like, okay, you need to go home and take some time by yourself.
No, but it's also good to like, I don't know, good to recognise it before, after, whenever. So I did that yesterday. I was like, I'm going. Like, I just French exited straight out the festival. I'm like, all my friends text me like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, got a bit claustrophobic, mate.
Yeah, got a bit claustrophobic, Darren.
Yeah, but also had a fab time. Like, but it's also just like listening to yourself. That's it. Like,
balance as well, right?
I'm big on the balance. Big on the balance. Yeah, I'm like, I think if I didn't have balance, I would be in a worse situation than I am. I'm thankfully, God has blessed me and I'm good. Like, I'm actually very good. But for what we've dealt with as a family, I'm like, the balance was going to my mates and going to the pub after watching some, like, you know, dealing with like quite horrible and terrible stuff happening to my brother. And it's also with him, it's the same balance with him. Like, that's why he's okay now, because I think it's acceptance and also letting go. Like, not ruminating on certain things.
Hard though. Oh
yeah,
gosh.
Very hard, but to an extent, like, I think you can't carry certain struggles whilst also new struggles are. Gosh. You know, you can't carry all those bags.
It's very true.
So big bag lady vibes.
I was just literally about to say Erykah Badu. Missed you on Saturday because you went there.
I know.
But
I heard about that.
Bag lady. And it's so funny. My manager, she always, like when there's like a time when we're near burnout, she always references the song, and she was like, listen to the actual lyrics. You've got too much bags. And I'm like,
you put
I need to take a bag off.
Exactly.
I take one bag
off. Put 1, 2 down, and then you can actually pick them up when you're ready.
And I think that's a really good thing to think about. You don't always have to deal with everything at once. Sometimes just pause for a little piece, have a little dance, whatever your expression is.
Exactly.
Like, because it could be anything. And I think sometimes people put all this onus on, you need to be doing mindfulness and you need to be
mindfulness. For me is actually fully in the club.
Thank you. It's in what's the club. Mindfulness.
There's a judgment there as well. I think also there's a self-judgment and there's a judgment from others. But I'm like, as long as you're keeping yourself in check, and you know, every coping mechanism is great. I think that's also like, you don't have to like shit on everyone's coping mechanisms,
100%.
or that's their defense and that's what's got them so far. And if it needs to change, if it needs to pivot when you're getting older, or your body is telling you, okay, enough of the partying, then cool, that works. But I've definitely, like, I don't, you know, I'm not out every night, but I definitely, when I need a break, I'm like, okay, let me go to a jazz bar on my ones and have a little drink and chill, you know, and that's my release. And it's like, and it might not be everyone's, but I don't want to do yoga at 6 a.m.
Listen to me. Let me tell you something. I tried to do yoga the other day.
PM.
I tried to do yoga the other day. It doesn't work for my brain. My brain's too much is happening. It's too fast. Too many thoughts. I find it hard to sit still. Like, I can sit still, but like not and do nothing. I need.
My brain is going off.
Yeah,
like,
it's too understimulating for the overstimulation that's happening in my brain.
Yeah. So the kind of like revelations I've had while at a concert, I'm like, whoa, breakthrough.
I'm inspired.
Yeah, literally. Like, okay, so we'll do our in-person therapy together then.
So just we're rounding up. Such a good conversation. What can people expect to find in your book? That's what I'd like to know.
It is a creative anthology with about 500 contributors. Really speaking from all different creative mediums. And they're not, the purpose was for it to not be the thing they make money from, essentially. So we've got builders in there who have written poetry, and I've never met some of these people. I found them on Reddit, I found them like Facebook groups, like friends of friends of friends, like someone's uncle. Like there's a lot of different, it's also not categorized, there's no contents, because I think I didn't want to put different demographics together, because I'm like, I liked how you could, and if you really pay attention, there's a lot of pieces that correlate, and it's like you've got this Punjabi man talking about this mental health group he's created, and then it leads on to someone talking about displacement, then it leads into then like this like very white working class British experience that actually the threads are there, and it's just, I think it's also me just being a bit like hide and seek. There's where are the clues,
I love that.
And I made it. When did I make it? I made it when I was 23, so it's like it was a while ago, and I think definitely I'm working on the next one, but I'm taking time with it, because the last one I did it in a very short space of time, and I'm like, now the next one is specifically for and on black men and by black men.
Stunning.
So there requires more research there, and more nuance, and bringing people in to help on that. But yeah, it's a creative anthology, so you can pick it up whenever you want, open it on whatever page resonates for you, and there's images, there's like skeletons of a screenplay. It was really again about giving people a platform for their work, you know, actually for their expression, and a lot of people were actually creating it, like their pieces, in very difficult times. So we had quite a lengthy interview process where I would then be on the phone to them like all hours of the night, being like, okay, what about this? And there was never any heavy editing, because I'm like, there's real importance in keeping the voice of the person intact. And there's real beauty in that, you know, even certain spelling mistakes, looking back, I'm like, oh, you know, there's a lot of it is actually intentional. It's like the subconscious coming out.
Just raw.
Completely raw. So that's basically it. Even, and I would say there's definitely trigger warning, so that's why the books aren't in primary schools. And we focus on only certain extracts. So but yeah, you can kind of figure out what the piece is going to be about by the tone of the page and how I've like laid it out. It's also not ever, there's place markers, so it goes from, and the place markers are about my brother. So it was interviews that I was having with him while he was sectioned, and it starts off with, I think it starts off with confusion, anger, and then hope. It ends with hope. But just he's really been my biggest guiding force in it, and it's taught me so much. So it's not a book about him, because sometimes people are like, oh, it's like want to really focus on like our experience, but I'm like, it's actually really about showing that whoever's going through it, there's a lot of women also who've contributed who who are linked to who have someone in their family or their partner was struggling, and also just talking also about how it affects them, and without having the shame and the guilt of, you know, this isn't, they felt like they were overtaken like the narrative, or they were overtaken, and it's not actually about that. It's like, it's giving space to everyone also to talk about the real life impacts of being a carer. So
where can people find this book?
So our website is currently under maintenance. Basically building a better website, but you can find it literally by DMing me, and I can give you the link to buy the book. The book is still stocked in the Tate,
Stunning.
I think, a couple bookshops in the UK and in London, and actually abroad in different bookshops, but my distributor now is Prim. So this is a black owned book club, bookshop, just amazing literary organisation that's run by one of my closest, called Chloe Bailey. So I would definitely say to check Prim out, but Prim is my sole distributor now.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
you can find him and his with Prim at any of their events and also
Stunning.
at our events. But I would say also just DM me because it will be cheaper than
And
buying
what is
it.
your at?
My at is Hélène Selam Prosperity. Prosperity is spelled with a double E. It was a joke.
Okay.
The book is also under, it's self-published, so it's Prosperity Publishing.
Stunning.
And you can find, actually, if you DM him and his, him x his is the him and his website, is the Insta. But also, if anyone has a barrier in terms of accessing, in terms of money, that's why I also say DM, because we can do a little deal.
Cheeky deal.
Yeah. So.
You wanted to read something, so
I wanted
do
to
that
read this,
to round off.
This little quote.
Very excited for that.
This is Aldous Huxley from The Island, and I read it the other day and I was like, it's so true. It's not diminishing what you go through, but really how you can develop new ways of coping. It's dark because you are trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. I was so preposterously serious in those days. Lightly is the best advice ever given me. So throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly, my darling.
Stunning.
That's it.
What a beautiful way to end. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me
for
on.
joining us. It's been oh gosh.
Big pleasure.
Yeah.
This one's the OG.
Thank you. If you've been affected by any of the topics or themes discussed today, we're going to have some services linked to the promos. Some of the ones we spoke about today are really important, but we'll relink them. We'll get them going. Thank you so much. I've been your host, Kim. This has been Out of Office with Kim. You can find us on socials at OOOWKIM on Instagram. Thank you.